What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Movie Dash podcast brought to you by Lauya.net, a podcast where we review movies, TV series, do interviews, and round up the week with iron hot topics in the world of cinema. I'm Dashran, and I'm going to be having a chat with a very, very special guest today. He is the director of Shadowplay, which won a bunch of awards recently, Mr. Pietra Arjuna.
Hi, Dash.
Yes.
Pleasure and honor to be here.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine, man. So how have you been? Recently, your film won Best Digital Feature Film, also Best Digital Cinematography at the Malaysian Digital Film Awards, man. Congratulations. How
Thank
do you
you.
feel?
I feel fortunate,
Okay.
considering that it took some time to build traction for this film, but it seems to be finding its way.
Right.
Word of mouth was getting around, and it happened to reach the ears and eyes of the committee at MDFA. One of which is I have to give a special shout out to Fikri Jermadi,
Yeah.
who was one of the first local critics to review the film, and basically he just loved it. Straight up, I suppose that had something to do with us winning as well.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, it's honestly definitely before we started rolling, I was telling you that it's easily the most unique Malaysian film that I've seen this year.
right.
Right?
Okay.
Because it is unabashedly experimental.
Right.
You clearly didn't hold anything back. And I think that is, it comes with the territory of indie filmmaking. Like you get to experiment, you get to do what you want. And also, as we mentioned just now, your film won an award at the Malaysian Digital being the key here. So when you were planning, when you were at the scripting stages of this film, did you plan on releasing it straight to digital? How did it go?
Okay, not at all, because
Okay.
the genesis of this film actually started 10 years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
When I more or less started off making my first forays into directing.
Okay.
Because prior to that, I was an offline editor.
Right.
And I wanted this film to be my personal statement, as a debut film. Didn't quite pan out that way. So
Okay.
technically, it's actually my fifth film,
Yeah.
following a few co-directing
Right.
efforts. But I would count it as still my first solo feature film.
Yes.
But at the time, the landscape was a bit different. There was more opportunity to perhaps get your film distributed locally, theatrically, if you find the proper channels. But the reason why it took 10 years is because as I shopped it around, nobody wanted the film.
Right.
It just couldn't be positioned for local audiences.
So
here
this
and
time
there.
you already
Yeah.
had a script at that
Yeah.
time? Okay. So you were trying to get people to produce it, etc.,
Exactly.
distribute it, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So over the course of time, the script had to evolve.
Yeah.
And I realized that if I had any chance of getting this film made, I had to scale down the scope of the film because it was quite epic at first, and
Okay.
I was naive at the time.
Right.
So into something more micro budget in nature, and I had to somehow localize it a bit more.
Yeah.
But ironically, the person who essentially greenlit the film with some Kickstart funding was foreign.
Okay.
Ken Petrie,
Right.
who made this film called Enemy Within
Yes.
in Pinewood. So I met him. He liked the concept. He saw the proof of concept, and immediately he said, "Look, how much is this film going to cost?" So we haggled and said, "I'll give you this much to get it
So
off the ground."
when was
Okay.
this roughly?
This was just early last year.
Okay.
So finally, that
Yeah.
happened. And at that point, we already knew from the get-go that if we were going to stick to our guns and make this film the way we wanted it to, our chances of getting it released locally were quite slim.
Right.
Especially since Ken wanted the film to be shot in English. Because he figured that it would find its audience abroad more likely than would be here.
Right.
And sure enough, it's actually under a North American distribution deal digitally. So going back to your question, okay, in the end, we decided to go with digital because it was the best deal on the table at the time. And also because for a lot of indie films, whether it's here or abroad, it's getting harder for them to find, local distribution.
But-
Theatrical distribution.
Okay, so we will get to the theatrical distribution part of it because I do want to talk about that a little bit more. But
Yeah,
so when we talk about digital, right, the first thing that comes into a lot of people's mind is Netflix.
Right.
Or, you have Amazon Prime,
Yeah.
Apple TV, all
Right.
these kind of things.
Yeah.
But currently your film is on Vimeo, right? So how did that go about and all? Because you see, here's why I'm very curious, right? Like at the end of the day, when it comes to like let's say films, like if film buffs, like the most hardcore people or like film critics or whatever, you know, we will watch it wherever it is, right? But at the end of the day, like film is still a business in a sort of sense, you know, you still want it to be like a sustainable thing where you can get revenue out of it and all these kind of things. So now that your film is straight on Vimeo, how does that aspect of it work?
Okay. Well, Vimeo is just one of the platforms.
All right.
Okay. So just kind of like tracking back a little bit. Essentially, there's so many indie films out there right now, wherever you go, because you know the technology has become so accessible to filmmakers. You know, HD. You know, back then when we were shooting on 35mm, it was less accessible. So it's become reached critical mass to the point that the majority of them probably find it hard to get any kind of theatrical release. So digital, and this what I mean by digital, it both encompasses streaming and VOD. Okay. Seems to be the viable route for the lower profile films. And admittedly, our film is still somewhat low profile. Hopefully, traction will build. So in terms of our current deal right now, digitally, it's more VOD. So this covers Vimeo, Amazon Prime Video, iTunes, and Google Play. And eventually a DVD release as well. But this is all under a North American deal. So technically, hasn't even been released in Malaysia yet. Even though these platforms are available worldwide. Technically, it hasn't been released in Malaysia. So on that note, we're looking at some of the streaming platforms which are more accessible to Malaysia, such as just to mention possibilities at this point, Netflix or Mubi or others. So,
So right now, like. Okay, like you said, it hasn't officially been released in Malaysia, right? But how has the general reception been like in the US and all that? Like how has it been so far?
So far, things as it usually goes with distributors, they tend to take their time. So we don't even know what our revenue is just yet, but we're supposed to know this month based on our earnings just in September, so we'll know. My suspicion is it's going to take time, for it to
find an audience, word of buzz and all that.
Or break even. But that's the good thing about the film being released on VOD or digitally, because the shelf life is forever. You know, it doesn't stay in theaters for just 2 weeks and then they pull the plug.
Because you can always find an audience anytime.
Exactly. Which is why we're still in the even 3 months down the line, we're still kind of like pushing the film and pimping it here and there. So now with Layat, catching wind of it, and then MDFA, there's a chance that it'll find its audience eventually, whether it's here or overseas. But in terms of critical reception, there have only been like maybe about 15, 20 reviews so far. But most of them were from North America and in the UK. And it's been pretty good. Pretty positive for the most part.
I've read like a lot of them as well.
Some negative ones more locally, but but that's kind of expected because it's for valid reasons as well, because it's not for everybody. Film, and it has its flaws, which I agree with. But fundamentally, it seems that people who appreciate the film tend to favor its strengths more than its flaws.
So, I guess that's how it is with any film, right?
I suppose.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Malaysian film industry in general, right? Because I'm very interested, because this is very fascinating, right? There's this whole, over the past couple of years, you've seen in terms of quality, there seems to be an increase in quality in the Malaysian film industry in general. But there also seems to be a decrease. I don't know if I'm using expressing this right, but yes, you get a lot of all these independent filmmakers who have big ideas, who have very strong visions and all that. Yet a lot of these movies either don't come out in cinemas, or when it does come out in cinemas, it sort of tanks at the box office. So like, for example, one film that comes to mind is earlier this year we had Fly By Night by Zaire Omar.
Right.
Really, really good film.
Absolutely.
Really
Yeah.
good film.
Yeah.
Didn't find an audience at the
Yeah.
box office.
Yeah.
Now that it's on Netflix, I see more people talking about it.
Right.
So what does it take? Because a lot of filmmakers, I'm
Yeah.
assuming,
Right.
like one of their dreams is, like I want my film to be in cinemas. How do you
Yeah.
do that? Like in the Malaysian landscape?
Yeah, right. Good question. Very, very good
Yeah.
question. And frankly, I'm still trying to navigate
Yeah.
through that myself, But right now, it seems that, any guarantee of your film getting theatrically released here is if it somehow ticks all the boxes
Yes.
for positioning and for marketability,
Right.
for the most part. And if it doesn't tick all the boxes, then obviously the distributors are taking a risk on it.
Right.
And right now it's getting a little bit more challenging for indie filmmakers in that sense. Or perhaps I'm maybe speaking for myself, but I noticed that other...
Yeah, I've noticed that as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And you see, here's something that I find very fascinating, and I would like to know your thoughts on
Right,
it, right?
right.
So, what is the Malaysian identity as far as film is concerned, right? And
yeah.
who do you target certain films to? For example, now what I'm talking about is like when we talk about, okay, let's say if you are going, what I notice is a lot of Malaysian filmmakers, they like, for example, you have a filmmaker who wants to make a Chinese movie,
Right.
for example,
Yeah.
because that is the culture that speaks to him the most in
Right.
terms of Malaysian Chinese. But the
Yeah.
thing is,
Yeah.
now when you make a film,
Yeah.
now most of the Chinese speaking audiences are going to say,
Yeah.
why should I watch your film
Right.
when I have films from Hong Kong and China and Taiwan,
Yeah.
all these films are coming out, all these bigger names.
Yeah.
The same thing you can say with, let's say, someone who wants to make a Malaysian Tamil movie.
Right.
And someone like, if this person makes a Malaysian Tamil movie, now you got a lot of the target audience.
Yeah.
They're gonna say, well,
Yeah.
Rajinikanth is having
Yeah.
like starring in a new movie.
Yeah.
Vijay
Yeah.
is starring in a new movie.
Yeah.
Why would I watch
Yeah.
this? You get
Right.
all these things. Even the indie scene from India
Yeah.
is starting to get a lot of like mainstream
Yeah.
appeal and all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
English,
Yeah.
don't even have to
No,
say.
yeah,
That's the
yeah.
worst of the lot because
yeah.
a Malaysian English movie, because most of the English speaking people are just gonna say,
Yeah.
I can just watch a movie from Hollywood.
Exactly.
Every single week there's a new big Hollywood movie coming out.
Right.
So what goes through the minds of these Malaysian filmmakers? So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that, to me, it
Yeah,
seems like
yeah.
you can only make
Yeah.
a Malay movie.
Yeah.
Because that seems to be our most,
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
overall identity, I guess.
Yeah.
But even then, the Malay movies that do well are only the Hantu Kat Limas or the Pascals or whatever. And these are all,
Yeah.
not to take a dig at them or
Yeah.
whatever, but these are the very, very, very mainstream,
Right.
palatable for everyone,
Yeah.
all ages, that
Yeah.
kind of thing,
Yeah.
So what goes through the minds of you as a filmmaker, as a
Yeah.
Malaysian filmmaker? First of all, what language do you
Yeah,
want to make
yeah,
a film in? How
yeah.
do you target?
Yeah, no, you've nailed it on the head.
Yeah.
And we actually had this conversation with one of the producers at ATF last year, the Asian film market.
Right.
Okay, and one of the things he said about Malaysian cinema is how fragmented it is.
Yes.
And therefore, how do you narrow down a certain identity
Right.
that is that fits all.
Yes.
So especially in terms of language markets, but you're
Yeah.
right. It's like even within the language markets, people have a tendency to favor the foreign films.
Yes.
So I would say there are those of us who are savvy and aware of this situation and have pretty much conformed to it.
Yeah.
Because it's you have to survive,
Right.
And if you want to do what you're doing,
Yeah.
On the other hand, even if those of us who are aware of it, we still say, screw it, we're gonna try anyway,
Yeah.
because we can,
Yeah.
as provided that we can, and
Yes.
have the funds and somebody is willing to back
Because
you
at the end
up.
of the day, it's
Yeah.
your passion. You don't want to let it go. Yeah.
Exactly. And provided people who back you up on that. Because I think what we're looking at is potentially the big picture, what's
Right.
down the line. Even if we fail now, we're hoping that as long as many of us keep doing it,
Right.
it'll somehow lay things out, on the long run. Somebody's got to pioneer something.
Yes.
And as it was with the Old West, a lot of pioneers died in the process.
Right. Yeah.
So we so
you
we're
have to go to war.
Exactly.
And, take whatever hits that come your way.
Exactly.
Right?
So we're willing to be the sacrificial lambs. But I think it's essential that the way I see it is a middle ground kind of exists between the mainstream market / main language market,
right,
and the smaller alternative markets. Right. Because one example is obviously it seems to be a fluke at this time was the Journey,
right,
where it was all in Mandarin, but it spoke to every single Malaysian, because it had the formula, it had the right notes. So it's just a matter of, if we're talking about finding a successful fit-all Malaysian film, but what is that magic ticket?
But again, you see, thing is, I could be wrong on this, but I think I think even The Journey was distributed or at least marketed by Astro Shaw.
There you go.
And I think that's another thing, right? Like there seems to be some sort of monopoly or something. I don't know. Like we don't have to it's not about throwing anybody under the bus, but like it is factually speaking, there is like every movie that comes out from Astro Shaw. Does superbly well at the box office, and I think that's because of the marketing power that they have.
Yes,
because I think like good films that's one thing, right? But you need the first wave of audiences to go and check them out. And like I think like let's say like something like Fly By Night and all these films, which I think if it found a huge audience, like it would have, the ball would have continued to roll, and it would have made a lot of money. But
it might have even blown the lid open, and just a game changer.
Right,
it could have been a game changer.
Because when the press screening, after the press screening, like a lot of us were like shocked in a good way. This could change the game for Malaysian cinema. But it didn't, because it didn't make. So like in terms of marketing, because now let's say you as a director, you have made the best film ever.
Right.
Like, I mean, like something that you think this is your best work so far.
Right.
How do you navigate the marketing waters?
Again, you nailed it on the head. That's essentially what it boils down to.
Right.
It's the A&P, the marketing, and the majority of these films don't get that.
Right.
Because it seems that, I mean, like as you say, with Astro Shaw, they have a whole division for it.
Right.
It's almost like a task force.
Yes, and once you get them, the advertisement is in all the Astro things. So everybody has Astro at home. So you keep looking at
Exactly. A lot of it has to do with money as well. Right. Because on one hand, filmmakers, especially if it's independent and off studio, don't have enough money allocated for A&P. Their own, and in which case, when it falls into the hands of the distributors, they only fork out this much money and this much effort to do it. So in the end of the day, the film kind of falls under the radar if word of mouth doesn't push it. So unfortunately, that seems to be the case. So applying things to Shadowplay, for example, which is essentially a DIY low budget indie film, where a lot of it has to be done by the filmmakers themselves. Right. So we're hoping, I think we're kind of like learning the tools of the trade here by doing it on a smaller scale, is to do our own A&P, and that's, thank God for the internet there, where you boost your posts, you
social media,
you engage as many press outlets as possible, just to get the word of mouth generating. So by the time the film comes out in a more widely accessible viewing platform, people will know about it, and then
hopefully it just catches on.
Exactly. So that's what we're doing right now.
All right. I mean, okay, so now let's talk about the film, right? No spoilers, don't worry. Like to whoever's listening, we won't be getting to like spoilers or anything like that. But I have to say, like, it is unique. That much I can honestly. It is really unique because it clearly is a film that is made directly from you as a director. You know, there's no like tampering. There's no like people like it's not a film made in a factory where 200 voices are screaming inside the director's head. That much is very obvious, right? It's this very it's a noir film, right? It's about basically it's a crime thriller sort of thing where a man is trying to find a missing girl, but it in a way it takes place in like a dream world, right? That would you say that's a pretty apt way to summarize the film?
That's the easiest way to encapsulate it.
Right.
Yes.
So throughout the movie, you are basically like alternating between like dream world, real world, and even the protagonist is trying to figure out what's what and how does the dream world relate to the real world, right? That's the whole essence of it.
Right.
So it's basically like if you solve something in the dream world, you might figure out something that might help you in the real world as well. So it's gorgeous, by the way. Like it's really, really gorgeous looking.
Okay. Shout out to Prav Kumar, our DP, who won the MDFA award. Okay.
So that's one of the things I wanted to ask you, right? Since like I wanted to ask you a bit later, but since you brought it up, so now as a director, right? Like a director, you need to know everything. Right. You need to know a little bit of editing, script writing, this, that, because you're basically the captain of the ship.
Right.
But there are also this, basically it's a collaborative effort, right? So like everyone, your DP might have his own style, your editors must have his own style. So when you look at a film like Shadowplay, which is so, there is a very distinct like aesthetic to it. It kind of has this Blade Runner vibe to it, right? How much of it is you and how much of it is your DP?
Right, okay. I would say it's 50-50.
All right.
In the sense that, in terms of the look and vision, it's what I had in my head. Right. It's something that I was formulating in quite a while. But I needed to find somebody who had the skill and the talent to
execute it.
You know. And the thing about Prav was, we when we first met in the industry, it was shortly after the screening of Chua.
Right.
We realized that we just, we were on the same wavelength on a lot of levels. We loved the same films. We just got on really well, and we became friends on the top of it. And at the time, like me, he was kind of like up and coming. Right. And in my mind, I figured that to make Shadowplay, I need to work with a DP who can learn with me. Right. And find our way together. Yeah. And therefore there's room to experiment. If you work with a more seasoned, established DP, they tend to be very set in their ways. Right. And it would have been harder for me to convey my vision through them.
So they have their own style and everything.
Exactly. Yeah. And I had some questions about, did you get any pushback from your DP in terms of the look of the film, with all this neon and all this magenta, which is, so some DPs actually hate working with neon, because for technical reasons, Right. So at the end of the day, it became miasmic. Right. In the sense that if you ask me to look back and say, who did this and who did what, I actually can't tell you. We just kind of like our brains kind of merged.
And I think that's the best, right? When it's really a collaborative effort and it's not so much like okay, this is you can break it down. There's not a science to it. It's art, right?
Right.
But okay, so now going back to the idea, you said this you have been working on it for 10 years. This is a film 10 years in the making in a way. Right. So when did you get the idea for Shadowplay and like how did it grow from there?
Right. Okay. Rewinding back to maybe it was 2009 when I started to try to get it made, but I actually started writing it in about 2007, I think. Okay. And this was when I just started directing. It was the series called Ghost for Popia Pictures. What I had lying around for quite a while was this unfinished theory paper on the films of David Lynch that I did in college. Okay. Yeah. Which slowly I wanted to turn into a fan fiction script for something set in the Twin Peaks universe. Okay. But set in Malaysia. Right. But then I saw Mulholland Drive. I know I saw it, for some reason I only saw it like 5 years after it came out. I don't know why. And I realized, okay, screw this. I'm gonna make my first film, my love letter to Lynch. Right. So you kind of like drawing inspiration for the tropes and the elements of what makes a David Lynch story. I came up with something original. So that's how Shadowplay came about. Right. And at the time, it was called The Big Nothing. And it was a completely different film. Okay. Because initially it was more like an homage to classic 40s noir. All right. Okay, where even Tony Yusuf's character would be wearing like a fedora and a trench coat and a femme fatale was very stereotypical, cigarette and whatnot. Yeah. But then 80s nostalgia began to kick in. Right. And as a Gen Xer, I started to feel it. Yeah. Roughly around 2011 when Drive came out. Yes. So I'm like, gosh, it's like, actually I wanted to do something like this, but would people get it? But then over the course of the last few years, that 80s nostalgia has become quite prevalent, thanks to Stranger Things and so forth. So I think, okay, this is the right time for me to make this film. And therefore that's how the aesthetic, the 80s aesthetic came in, where the idea was to kind of like summarize the concept. What if David Lynch married Michael Mann in the 80s?
Okay.
And their love child was a direct-to-video B movie.
Right.
So that's basically the concept of Shadowplay.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely can see all these inspirations in the movie, right?
Yeah.
But okay, so that brings me to another question, right? So like this is, like you said, it's 10 years in the making.
Right.
This has been like your, it's like David Lynch, I'm guessing is your favorite director, and you want to make a love letter to him.
Right.
But is that, would you say that you have found your voice as a director? Because I ask this because, like, for example, your first film, or one of your earlier films, Chua, which is a collaborative effort between few directors. I really like the film, by the way.
Great, thanks.
And that film is not like this, right?
Yeah.
So, did you direct the Noah part of that film?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So
Go figure.
Okay. So would you say like that's sort of like the zone that you like to operate in?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I consider that my signature, my forte, my zone, as you said. And I mean, obviously, I have to be versatile,
right?
As a
for
filmmaker.
Sure.
And but for the most part, that's how I'd like to be known as, in terms of genre and in terms of narrative. But in terms of Shadowplay, as a, you're right. Even though it was a love letter to Lynch, I think I found my voice in the process. And I think, quoting Kevin Smith, don't be afraid to imitate in order to innovate.
Yes, correct.
I wouldn't necessarily say I'm copying Lynch, but by drawing inspiration from him, I can find who I am in the process. And I think that's why I think every filmmaker is entitled to one wank in their career just to discover who they are.
Yeah.
And that's what Shadowplay is. You're right. It's basically an experiment.
Yeah.
And to find that signature. And right now, it's just applying it to, let's say, obviously, for every Shadowplay, I need to make like 3 mainstream films. And those are the other 3 films I directed. So, but it's like finding pieces of Shadowplay and applying it to those more mainstream films as well. So one example being Safari Mall, this creature feature, which is coming out next year, hopefully.
Okay.
Lots of VFX made specifically for the Malay market.
Right.
So it's mainstream.
Okay.
And then
that's going to be a theatrical film. Okay.
Knock on wood. So there's a lot of CGI involved, so that's why it's taking a while. And then earlier this year, I did this Mandarin language film called Red Storm, which is basically a B-grade action film. But I learned a lot of things from that. But my co-director Michael Chua wanted me to co-direct it because he liked the look of Shadowplay. He wanted me to apply some of that to the film, for example. So little bits of it here and there, and then this series I did for View called Devoted, with some other directors as well. So once again, I was able to evolve my sensibilities through that.
I think there's definitely that struggle, right? Between having to want to do your own art piece, and also because the Malaysian cinema landscape for local filmmakers isn't that there is no Tarantino's and all that here yet. So you have to find that balance between doing something that is not necessarily a passion project, but infusing your style in it. That's very interesting. And I think it's very, very important. Like, one thing I really love about your film is that in a landscape or in an industry right now where a lot of people are trying to play it very safe, this movie does not. It clearly doesn't, for better or worse, doesn't dumb down anything. It just like, this is it. And like, if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. That sort of thing. I think that's interesting. So one thing I found like interesting about your film, is that every single character in the film talks in a very dreamy kind of manner, right? The voiceovers by every single character. So was that like a very conscious decision? Like you wanted almost every single character except for like a couple.
Yeah.
Like most of them, like
Yeah.
especially when it takes place inside the dream
Yeah.
world, right? Everyone has that sort of
Yep.
way of talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Right.
But I took a bit of a risk on it, you know,
Yes.
so because some people perceived it differently. You know, some people say, "Oh, it's very stiff," you know, very theatrical. But I wanted that. You're right, exactly for that reason. You know,
Right.
where we're questioning the actual authenticity of this individual,
Right.
this character, and this scene. You know, is it real? Is it not? But but in order to convey that dream quality, I wanted the performances to be somehow on another elevated form of realism, you know,
Right.
or not or lack of it for that reason,
Yep.
you know. So that was intended on one hand. The results depends on the eye of the beholder,
Yeah.
you know, to be honest. And it was a bit of an experiment,
Right.
you know. So I learned from that as well.
Yeah.
But it's you're right.
And
Yeah.
also, so now that the film, you've already put it out there, right? People
Yeah.
have seen it. You've read some reviews. You've talked to people. You've probably seen it multiple times.
Sick of it.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
is there like now that you're watching it,
Yeah.
like is there something about the film
Yeah.
that you wish you'd done differently?
Oh, absolutely. And I actually, it's funny. It's kind of like the reverse because the first cut that I saw, I hated the film.
Right.
You know, I thought that I failed.
Okay.
You know, and there were so many things I wanted to do differently. You know, even as I was shooting it, it's like, you know, because of we had such a limited budget, we only had 10 days of principal photography.
Right.
That's all we could afford, you know, and 4 extra days for pickups and whatnot. So obviously I thought to myself, you know, if only we had 2 weeks at least, or even or ideally a month, you know, this could have been perfect.
Yeah.
You know? But there are no do-overs. You know, you learn from it, you live with
Yeah.
it. Funny enough, it grew on me with every consecutive viewing.
Right.
And then once the final cut was done, I was absent from it for 6 months because I had other films
Yeah.
to direct. And I came back to it for the final DCP screening. I'm like, okay, this is actually quite a beautiful film.
Yeah.
Not just visually, but you know, I'm feeling it. You know,
Yeah.
and
And you can feel satisfied with
Yeah.
your work. Yeah.
And you know, regardless of everything, I think you're right. At the end of the day, I'm fairly satisfied with
Yeah.
it. And if there's one thing I would like to do differently, is essentially the scale of the film. You know, I wanted to build a whole universe out of it,
Right.
Based on the original script. So actually, there is a chance that I might want to remake the film, maybe
Okay,
10 years
10
from
years,
now.
yeah.
You know, once I have more clout, you know,
Yeah.
and more money. It would be a slightly different film,
Right.
but thematically it would be the same. Yeah.
Because like
Yeah.
it's like 10 years from now,
Yeah.
it's not just clout. You probably
yeah.
you'll be even more seasoned,
Right,
You know, in
exactly.
the role, you have
Yeah,
more.
yeah.
So to build a universe,
Yeah.
you'll be much more of a smoother as compared to right now. If you had to juggle so many pieces, you know,
Right.
Like I think 10 years from now,
Yeah.
that could be something
Yeah.
very interesting because it is a very
Yeah.
interesting from the limited, like, because this is a small, like the version that we do see right now
yeah.
is it's a smaller
You're
kind
right.
of thing, right?
Right.
But there are a lot of interesting pieces, you know,
Yeah.
that you would like to be in the world longer,
Right.
and you know, explore like
Yeah.
every nook and corner of the world, you know. So
Exactly.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
So, what next? So I'm talking not before we get to like you know what you're gonna do in the next 5 years or
Right,
whatever.
right.
Which like just in terms of Shadowplay, right?
Right.
What are you planning to do with the film next? Because now
Yeah.
it's out on Vimeo, like
Yeah.
you say, like on Amazon and a couple of other things. Are you planning to get it theatrically released? There
Yes.
was a screening at Urbanscapes, like you know, can
Right,
you,
right.
like tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about that.
Okay, so Urbanscapes, you know, God bless them, God bless
Yeah.
Nadira and Elise and everybody involved. Fundamentally, it was our KL premiere.
Right.
Okay, so I think it might have contributed to distraction because the turnout that night was very respectable. I was quite
Wow.
surprised. I thought we were only going to have like 5 people show up or something
Right.
like that, but it was essentially a full house.
That's great.
Yeah, so it seems to be the word of mouth seems to be reaching out to people. So this encourages me to maybe let's continue pursuing, at least a limited run
Right.
in a cinema somewhere, and there are still some options on the table. So without jinxing it, all I can say is the door is still open. Okay, that, and of course, a more local or regional friendly streaming
Right.
platform, okay, which obviously would have a wider reach
Yes.
than the VOD platforms in Malaysia, at least.
Yeah.
The VOD platforms have a wider reach in the US,
Yeah.
obviously, but right now, people would only rent or buy it if they knew about the film.
Right.
So we're trying to push our distributors. Okay, guys, can you do a little bit more? You know,
Yes.
we want this thing, right now. So let's,
Yeah.
put out another thing on the outlet somewhere,
Right,
and just say, especially since the film's going to come out on DVD.
Yeah.
I would tell them, okay, look, if you don't mind, just push that release a bit more, because I think, especially in the US, funny enough, a lot of the people who watch these kind of films, the niche market, still like physical media.
Right.
Yeah,
I think
So,
like in US people
Yeah.
still like collect Blu-rays and all that. And
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a big thing. It's not
Yeah.
like a niche thing,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of people do
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Whereas in Malaysia,
Yeah.
it's just that
Yeah.
culture isn't here.
Exactly.
Right?
If you can get it for free, just go to a torrent and
Yes, that's the thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's the challenge. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I think when we talk about like
Yeah.
VOD
Yeah.
and all that, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's always this.
yeah.
Like, do you find that a challenge in Malaysia? Like,
Absolutely.
right? Because like
Yeah.
people will be like,
Yeah.
why should I pay $4
Right.
when I can just torrent it? You
Yeah.
know that thing. Because I think
Yeah.
in Malaysia,
Yeah.
the masses
Yeah.
still think that torrenting is okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think like everyone everywhere all over the world torrent, but I
Yeah.
think in like
Yeah.
places in US and all,
Yeah.
people sort of even if they do it, they know they're doing something wrong.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You have
Yeah,
that at the
yeah.
back of your mind. Whereas in Malaysia, I feel that general masses think it's normal.
Yeah, it's entrenched in our
Yes.
culture. We've been bootlegging since the 80s, and
Right.
ever since VHS came out.
Yeah.
So this is just the evolution of
Yeah.
it. And funny enough, it's like you're right. It's like even my own family members,
Right.
downloaded the film illegally, and I'm like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
You're killing me.
Yeah.
This is a stab in the back. And I'd actually be like preaching the word at some of the seminars
Right.
I've been involved in. I'll be telling filmmakers, guys, if you illegally download the films of your fellow filmmakers, you're complicit in your own
Yes.
demise down the line.
That's the thing,
It'll
right?
come back and haunt
Yeah.
you. When your films come out, you're going to lose money because
Right.
they're doing what you were doing now.
Yeah.
So you're contributing to the evil.
Pretty much,
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
like but you see, right? This is what I find very interesting, right?
Yeah.
Like let's
Yeah.
say your 10-year-old kid, okay, you're going shopping with your mom or whatever,
Yeah.
and then as a 10-year-old, you just take one chocolate bar,
Yeah.
or just one sweet,
Yeah.
put it in your pocket and you
Yeah.
walk out of
Right.
the store.
Right.
If your mom finds out, she will whack you, like pretty much.
Yeah.
Or you
Yeah.
get a beating, or you get
Yeah.
scolding, or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And that could be just a RM1 thing,
Right. Right.
You steal a pencil or something like that.
Right.
But this is
Yeah.
like a film.
Yeah.
It costs millions of dollars.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the ticket price is like at least 15 ringgit or
Yeah.
something like that. And
Yeah.
but people are just like,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
That's the thing, that I
Yeah.
find very interesting. That whole people just don't see it as they're doing
Right.
something wrong. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, the only way to kind of like make people aware that it's wrong is what the FBI does in the U.S.
Yeah.
Not only is it illegal to pirate the film, but it's illegal to actually view it or download
Right.
it. So that's why piracy is quite minimal in
Yes.
in North America
But
or
do you
Europe.
think? Yeah. Do you think like one thing I find fascinating is
Yeah.
like have you realized that
Yeah.
Malaysia is one of the only countries,
Yeah.
like other than maybe like India or
Yeah.
something like that,
Yeah.
where you can sell illegal
Yeah.
DVDs
Yeah.
legally.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Right. Exactly.
You can get
Yeah.
a license, an
I know.
actual business
Yeah.
license, open a
Yeah.
shop
Yeah,
and
right.
sell
I know.
to like illegal pirated copies of DVD. That's the
And-
most.
And the
Funniest
hilarious
thing, yeah.
I know, and the hilarious thing is that even now they're struggling because they're
Yes.
competing with the downloads.
Right. Oh my
And
God.
you see more of them like shutting down.
Right.
The only one left that I know of is in Bangsar.
Yeah.
Okay, wait, sorry, I didn't say that. But ironically, the pirates. Ironically, for filmmakers and film buffs, we should be thankful for them because this is how we can get
Yes.
less mainstream films.
Right.
And I think a lot of film education in Malaysia, ironically,
does come
came
from that.
from the pirates.
For
So-
sure.
So
Because we
yeah.
don't have, like, especially
Yeah.
back then,
Yeah, yeah.
even now, we
Yeah.
don't have
Yeah.
the access to
Yeah. Yeah.
like I don't know, if let's say this was
Yeah.
2006 and I
Yeah.
wanted to watch The Godfather,
Yeah, right.
where the hell do I
I
go?
know, right, right.
That was the only way.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
it is like
Yeah. It's a trade-off.
it's a trade-off,
Yeah, it's
so
a devil's deal.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's just Malaysia. So
Yeah.
what are you working on like right
Yeah.
now other than
Okay.
Shadowplay? And, like,
All right. Usual bread and butter. So,
Okay.
and I'm just working on this. I don't think I'm allowed to mention what it is,
Right.
but let's just say that it involves one of the biggest football team, one of the biggest football clubs in Malaysia.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
So you'll see that
Is
next
that a
year.
film or a documentary?
No, I can't say.
Okay.
But you
All
will.
right.
You will find out.
All right. Okay, looking forward to it.
In a few weeks, actually. Okay.
Okay.
Quite soon. That's one thing. That's bread and butter. But
Yeah.
I am developing my next feature.
Right.
3 of them actually. So as it goes with these things, you gotta, have 3 things going on just so that you
Right.
could have at least one of them happen.
Yeah.
So hopefully next year I get to shoot it,
Nice.
and it will be a noir film,
All right.
and it will have some reflections of some of the political scandals we've been witnessing lately in the press.
Dude,
Yeah.
okay. That's
Yeah.
interesting, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
now that there's a new government, as filmmakers, do y'all feel things are different?
Yes and no.
Right.
For one thing, everything that happened under the Jibby regime, we're free to do now.
Right.
Any political or conspiracy thrillers that we might want to explore,
Yes.
we can do without any repercussions.
Right.
So that's great. On the other hand, in terms of censorship and
Yeah.
regulation, not much has
Has
changed
changed,
yet.
right?
But then again, it's only been less than 2 years.
Yeah.
So I do notice that some of the LPF regulations say, okay, basically for the most part, we'll let this thing slide. We let that thing slide, provided that there's a purpose for it.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
even like Chua,
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember like a few, I think like a couple of y'all, I'm not sure if you were there, like, so
Yeah.
like y'all screened like scenes of it
Yeah.
in my university
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
Right. So I was excited to watch it. And then
Yeah.
I went to the cinema and
Yeah.
watched it.
Yeah.
There was this scene where the couple is arguing
Yeah.
about religion and
Yeah.
the entire thing is like, I think muted
Yes.
or cut off
Yeah,
and
yeah.
all that.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
but that's one of the most important discourses in the film.
Exactly.
Like, so I guess it's a never-ending battle for you guys.
Basically, so
Yeah.
the best way to stay clear of that is to try not to get too bold in terms of social criticisms,
Right.
Especially when it touches on religion.
But
obviously,
usually, like,
Yeah.
if you look through the ages, a lot
Yeah.
of films we look to,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, we draw inspired from, or like those films that we praise,
Right.
like from coming out of
Yeah.
the US or
Yeah.
wherever it is,
Yeah.
are those films,
Yeah.
you know, that push the envelope and
yeah,
all.
right.
But in Malaysia, it's...
That's
yeah.
true, and I would say that the next film that I'm trying to do, I probably would not be able to make it here,
Right.
Because I think I'll just say this: it involves a same-sex relationship,
Okay.
and that's deemed basically illegal.
Yeah, it is.
I could go, to
The unfortunate
you know,
truth about
to the big house with that.
Right.
So the only way I could get it made is I can still shoot it here, but I might have to make it as a foreign film.
Right.
With foreign money. So I'll be shopping it around at project markets.
Right.
And
I
see
guess
what
the good
happens.
thing
Yeah.
about the digital landscape right
Yeah.
now is also that if you can't get a movie theatrical release, like
Yeah.
let's say if it's a movie about LGBT or whatever,
Yeah.
but it can still be released on Netflix.
Right.
And like the
Yeah.
internet, as of right now at
Yeah.
least, there's no
Yes.
like censorship.
Even though
and
some
all
people
that.
have tried,
Yeah,
and died
and got
trying.
roasted for it. Got
Sorry.
severely
Yeah.
roasted for it. Yeah.
Yeah. But right. So I think that's and in which case I think Shadowplay, whether it fails or succeeds, is at least traversing that territory to see how far we can go and what we can do. And therefore, I would just encourage other indie filmmakers to consider it as a viable option.
Right.
If it's hard, especially if you can't foot the budget to get it released cinematically, it's cheaper, more cost effective in the long run, and it has a longer shelf life. Even if you don't break even that quickly, I'm confident you will. Provided that you just keep pimping the film.
Right.
You know.
Okay, so for before we wrap up, like just tell us like where exactly. So if like I'm a listener,
Yeah,
I would like to watch like Shadowplay. Like
right.
where do I go? How do I go about
Okay,
it?
all right. I actually have the link.
We'll link in the description
okay.
below.
Okay.
But generally Vimeo.
Vimeo is the most accessible
Okay.
everywhere in the world.
Right.
So yeah, definitely Vimeo. But if you happen to have an account with iTunes or Amazon Prime Video or Google Play, you could see it there too.
Right. So you can
Yeah.
basically rent it or buy it, right?
Rent it or buy it. you know.
Right. Awesome.
And just a note, renting it on Vimeo is basically the same price as a movie ticket here.
Yeah.
But you get to watch it
Watch
at
it-
home for
yeah.
24 hours.
Right.
You know,
and you get to watch it with multiple people.
Exactly.
Right.
And people who don't, like talk on the phone while you're watching it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that's great, man. Like
Yeah,
so
yeah.
like a good luck for Shadowplay and all
Thank
your
you.
future projects, man.
Thank you very much.